Everyone at Riverside General called her the quiet one. She kept her head down. She spoke only when spoken to. She wore her hair pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt. Nobody knew her real name. Nobody knew that 6 years ago, she had pulled 3 men out of a burning vehicle under enemy fire, or that the scar along her collarbone wasn't from a car accident like she told people, but from shrapnel in a country she was never allowed to name. Nobody knew, until the night a helicopter landed on the roof, and a man in uniform said a word that stopped her cold. Before we get into it, welcome back to Silent Heroes. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from tonight. Also, guess what her real job used to be before you find out. Let's get into it. Her name badge said, Emily Carter, RN. That wasn't her real name. It hadn't been her real name in 6 years. Riverside General sat in a gray, forgettable stretch of a gray, forgettable city, the kind of place where nobody asked questions because nobody expected interesting answers. That was exactly why she'd chosen it. She was 34. Her hands were steady in a way that made older nurses nod approvingly, not knowing those hands had once held pressure on a wound while gunfire cracked overhead. Her eyes were pale gray and gave away nothing. She had a habit of standing with her back to the wall in any room she entered, though nobody had ever noticed that, either. She had learned the fastest way to survive was to make herself small. Small meant safe. Small meant no one looked twice. Small meant Dr. Grant Whitfield, the ER's attending physician and self-appointed king of the trauma bay, could walk past her 100 times a day without ever seeing what she really was. Whitfield liked being seen. He liked being right, or at least being loud enough that nobody noticed when he wasn't. He had a line he used on new nurses, a line he'd used on her the first week. I don't need opinions in my ER. I need hands that follow instructions. He said it with a smile. It never sounded like a threat. It always was one. There was only one person at Riverside who seemed to notice something underneath the quiet. His name was Walter. 81 years old, a retired mechanic, in for his 3rd round of cardiac observation that year. He liked to talk. Most of the staff tuned him out. Emily didn't. You don't stand like a nurse, he told her one evening, watching her check his 4-line with hands that didn't shake even once. You stand like somebody who's had people shooting at her. She said nothing. She just smiled, the way she always did when the truth got too close, and adjusted his blanket. Whatever you were, Walter said, you don't have to hide it from an old man with a bad heart. She didn't answer. But she didn't walk away either. It happened on a Tuesday. 11:47 p.m. The doors burst open before the ambulance had even fully stopped. 2 EMTs wheeling a gurney, shouting vitals, blood soaking through a field dressing that had been applied wrong. Behind them, a second gurney. Then radios. Then a man in a flight suit jogging in behind them, scanning the room like he was used to giving orders, not taking them. Whitfield took charge immediately, the way he always did, loud, fast, visible. Get me a line in the left arm, someone page ortho, I want. He was wrong. Emily saw it in 4 seconds. The wound wasn't in the leg. It was tracking up, into the abdomen, the dressing hiding an entry point Whitfield hadn't even checked. Internal bleeding. Fast. The kind that kills in minutes, not hours. She didn't say anything at first. Years of training told her not to. Years of hiding told her to disappear into the wall like she always did. Then the man on the gurney opened his eyes and said one word. Cobra. The word hit the room like a detonation. Not a name. A call sign. Her call sign, from a life she had buried under 6 years of silence, and a fake last name. She froze. Whitfield turned. What did he say? Do you know this patient? She said nothing. The old tremor she thought she'd trained out of her hands, the one from before, from when the nightmares still came, it wasn't there anymore. Her hands had gone still. Steady. Sure. Carter, Whitfield snapped. I asked you a question. She stepped forward instead of answering. He has a tension pneumothorax and an internal bleed, she said, her voice flat, clinical, and for the first time in 6 years, completely unafraid. If we don't decompress the chest in the next 90 seconds, he dies in this room. Whitfield opened his mouth to argue. She was already moving. A tension pneumothorax happens when air gets trapped in the chest cavity and has nowhere to escape, building pressure that collapses the lung and crushes the heart and major blood vessels. Left untreated, it kills in minutes. The fix is a needle decompression, a large-bore needle inserted into the second intercostal space, releasing the trapped air immediately. It is fast, it is brutal, and done correctly, it saves a life that would otherwise be gone before a surgeon ever arrived. Her hands didn't shake once. She found the landmark. She drove the needle in. A hiss of escaping air. A gasp from the man on the table. His oxygen numbers climbed on the monitor in real time, 82, 88, 94. The room went silent except for the beeping. Whitfield stood frozen, his authority evaporating in front of everyone watching. "Who," he said quietly, "are you?" She didn't answer. Not yet. Whitfield's face went through 3 colors in 5 seconds. White, red. Then the specific gray of a man realizing he'd been outclassed in front of witnesses. "You're relieved," he said, too loud, too fast. "Effective immediately. I want security up here, I want." "No." One word. Flat. Final. "I am just done hiding," she said. "This man needs a chest tube and a trauma surgeon, not a suspension. You can write me up after he's stable." A crowd had gathered at the edges of the bay, nurses, a tech, 2 security guards who'd stopped in the doorway instead of moving in. Nobody was looking at Whitfield anymore. They were looking at her. By 12:15 a.m., the trauma surgeon had arrived and taken over, and the patient, stable, breathing, alive, was wheeled toward the OR. Emily stood back against the wall, the way she always did, except now everyone in the room could see her there. Whitfield wasn't finished. "Security, escort her out. Now." That's when the doors opened again. 3 men in uniform walked in, led by a full-bird colonel with a face like carved granite. Behind him, a woman in a Black Hawk flight crew jacket, the same one that had landed on the roof 40 minutes earlier. The colonel's eyes swept the room and landed on Emily. He stopped. He straightened. And then, in front of the entire trauma bay, in front of Whitfield, in front of the security guards still hovering uselessly by the door, he saluted her. "Captain Sarah Doyle," he said. "Combat Medic, 82nd Airborne. 2 tours. Silver Star. Bronze Star with Valor Device. Officially listed as retired, unofficially the reason 4 men in this room's home state are alive today." The room didn't breathe. "That's not possible," Whitfield said. "She's a nurse. She's been here for—" "She's been hiding," the colonel said, "because people like you make it necessary." Whitfield's mouth opened and closed. "I run this ER. I have authority over—" "You had authority," the colonel said. Past tense. "I'd be very careful what you say next, Doctor." Whitfield, cornered, did what small men do when the walls close in. He turned on her instead. "She lied about her credentials. She used a false name. I want her arrested for fraud." That's when Walter's voice cut through the bay from his room down the hall, wheeled out by a tech who'd gone to get him the moment word spread. "She didn't lie about anything that mattered," the old man said. "She saved that boy's life while you stood there shouting orders that would have killed him." Whitfield's composure cracked further. "This is insane. I've worked here for 15 years. I built this department." "You built it on a grant that doesn't exist," said the woman in the flight jacket, stepping forward. She held up a folder. "We pulled your trial records after the second malpractice complaint hit our liaison office last month. The experimental protocol you've been running on trauma intake patients was never approved. It was never funded by the university. It was funded by a device manufacturer paying you directly to push their unapproved equipment through your ER. 4 patients. 2 of them nearly died from complications you never disclosed. The room turned on Whitfield the way it had turned toward Emily minutes earlier, except this time it was disgust, not awe. Whitfield lunged, not at anyone in particular, just a desperate grab for the folder, a shove that sent a tray of instruments crashing to the floor. Security finally moved, but Emily was faster. Old reflexes, never gone, just quiet. She had him against the wall before the guards reached him, one arm secured, no more force than necessary. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't make this worse." He stopped, struggling. Something in her voice made people stop. Later, alone in the stairwell before the police arrived, the colonel found her sitting with her head down, hands finally trembling, not from fear, but from 6 years of holding something in. "Your brother would be proud of you," he said quietly. "He always said you were the best medic he ever served with." Her brother, lost in the same deployment that left the scar on her collarbone. The reason she'd buried Captain Sarah Doyle and became quiet, invisible Emily Carter, because the day he died, she'd promised herself she'd never let anyone get close enough to lose again. "I know," she said. Her voice cracked just once. "I just wanted to help people without being seen. Without anyone asking about him." "You don't have to hide either part of yourself anymore," the colonel said. 6 weeks later, Riverside General opened its first combat trauma response program, training ER staff in battlefield triage techniques that saved lives in the golden hour. Its director, Captain Sarah Doyle, MD Track, RN, decorated combat medic, no longer hiding under a borrowed name. Whitfield lost his license within the month. The hospital board named the new intake protocol after the patient who almost died from his unapproved trial, a quiet, permanent reminder of what happens when ego outweighs care. Walter came to the program's opening. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. She caught his eye across the room, and he just nodded like he'd known all along. The truth is simple. The quietest person in the room is sometimes the strongest one in it. Courage doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just waits, patiently, for the moment it's needed most. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe to Silent Heroes, and tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in that ER? The next story is already waiting. The end.